My name is Henry Glogau. As I mentioned before, I was a recent June graduate from the Architecture and Extreme Environments program, where my professor and supervisor for the semester was David Garcia. I've been given 15 minutes to show you a condensed version of my thesis proposal, which was called Resource Revolution. The project is based in the city of Antofagasta in northern Chile. It has a focus on four main areas: social housing, resource production, community unity, and economic growth. Challenging the conventional social housing, this proposal explores how to create a social housing ecosystem that empowers communities to become self-sustaining through natural resource production. I investigate how architecture can play an active role in merging resource production and living. This presentation will guide you through a general overview, some strategies, design process, and final architectural proposal. Globally, we're facing inevitable rising urban informality. More people are choosing to live in the cities, which consequently, when housing prices have exponentially increased relative to income. By 2050, it is predicted that 3 billion people will be living within informal settlements. Chile is the most developed and urbanized country in Latin America, with 87% of its total population living within urban areas. We can see this rise of informality within Chile, with over 100,000 people living within 800 informal settlements. Chile's rapid and significant urban growth was primarily caused by an economic development model implemented in the 1970s by Augusto Pinochet. A mining region like Antofagasta thrived under Milton Friedman's free market economic philosophies, although the benefits were only seen by large companies and privileged few. This economic boom also meant a large migration growth, with people seeking job opportunities. Part of our Architecture and Extreme Environment program is that we do a 1-month-long expedition to various extreme climates. This year, our field trip was in Chile, where we saw the consequences of this political instability firsthand, with people literally fighting in the streets for their constitutional change. One significant failure of the Chilean government is providing the citizens with basic water access. There are over 1 million people who do not have access to clean water in Chile, something that you and I consider a basic human right. The consequences of the Pinochet militarized dictatorship are still felt today. Ongoing privatization has allowed corporations to control essential resources, depriving the general public, especially those in the lowest demographic. This led me to wonder how Chilean people could find unconventional ways to access common good resources. The first people to feel the consequences are those living within the informal settlements. One challenge they face is safe access to clean water, which is expensive, and in some communities they can only be dropped off once a week by a water truck. Another challenge is access to safe electricity, which they depend on by hacking into these formal systems. This has resulted in devastating fires which have wiped out many communities. During our trip, we spent 3 days actually rebuilding one of these settlements which had been completely burnt down. I'll now go through a little bit of my experience in collaboration. During this fieldwork, I was interested in addressing some of the current issues within the camps. I wanted to think about alternative ways of utilizing Chile's resources to our advantage, in particular their abundance of solar energy and seawater. I took a holistic approach to providing water, light, and energy through a solar desalination skylight, which I designed and tested, emitting natural diffused light in often dark and boarded up homes, producing drinking water, and creating a salt battery light through leftover brine. This prototype idea is something which I believe had the potential to be scalable. I found that the prototype became a departure point for a conversation around access to resources and opened the gate into the challenges that these communities were experiencing. What I realized was that there was further potential of an innovation could it be found when it translated into social innovation. I collaborated with residents where we designed a solar desalination garden with materials that we found within the community. It was important to work with them to develop the design to what made sense for them locally. Through our collaboration with an NGO called Techo, who worked within the camps, I managed to meet a diverse range of people. From my experiences and the people that I met there, I developed some guiding principles which I felt were important to the type of project I wanted to achieve. Self-sustaining, community-driven resource production. Enterprise, creating economic opportunity and growth. Circular design, reducing waste and reusing resources. Empathy, considerate of cultural and social economic diversity. Unity, strengthening community relationships and bridging the division between the formal and informal city. And lastly, empowerment, giving agency and fulfillment to the community. I am proposing a more decentralized way of accessing resources, alternative to the current top-down approach. As mentioned before, my location is in the mining port city of Antofagasta. My site is located on the informal side of the track, which is divided by this train track which runs all the way through. One thing to note is that there's no formal crossing onto the other side of the city. This particular land has not been an attractive option for many developers with the stigma of the surrounding informal settlement camps. This one on the top right was the camp which had the fire which we helped to rebuild. The nature of these informal settlements is that they organically grow outwards and take over unused land. As you can see from the time lapse, this trajectory is expected to flow onto my site. This is something that I really had to consider. I explored potential passive cooling strategies which look to utilize Chile's climate to my advantage. My proposed building includes 3 different types of housing typologies with integrated resource production. In total, there are 348 of these units. I'm also including a seawater reservoir combined with a community space, desalination units which provide public shade, aquaponics and hydroponics production facility and distribution hub, and a marketplace plus business rental. These programs were further broken down into potential spaces. I used a system of working out program proximity and distribution, as well as considering the potential user groups and their background, desires, and requirements. The schematic was useful in relating the flow of resources in relation to the stakeholders. I thought about the different types of value that my site could bring, rather than it just being a housing complex. This developed into more specific site strategies and how this could be achieved. I'll give you a general site overview. At the front, closest to the city, is the marketplace, garden, and playground, with the connecting bridge over to the connecting bridge over the train tracks. Next is the aquaponics and hydroponics facility and distribution hub. Here are the 3 different types of social housing, which are located more to the back of the site. And lastly, the water services and public shade, which are connected through a corridor which leads to the seawater reservoir at the back. I'll now go into further detail of some of the different buildings. There are 3 different housing typologies which are broken down into different qualities to suit different sizes, socioeconomic status, and resource production types. The first is the incremental house. This is a module system which is built to expand and connect with others. Given that the site is near an existing informal settlement, which will inevitably grow onto my site, I see this typology as one which could act as an interface between housing development and the wider community. I started to consider what my next evolution of my prototype could be, how to scale up this larger architectural element. Each house incorporates a solar desalination roof which provides fresh water and connects to different service utilities. There are 202 of these units which produce around 30 to 40 litres a day. I was imagining that over time my design would be hacked and plagiarized and reassembled to let others take advantage and pick and choose what living with resources would be like for them. I thought about a construction method which was simple, accessible, and could be assembled in a methodical way, with a design which the user can expand and customize based on their desires and budget. This is one configuration where you can see how it connects to the central corridor, which is the water towers and seawater desalination units. This animation, a little bit glitchy, is it's showing what these kind of internal qualities could be within the courtyards and how people are given the opportunity to customize their spaces, whether that's having shared investment with their neighbors or whether they're liking sort of a garden facade, or here within this next area there might be some sort of shading unit. The second typology is living with hydroponics. This is a topology of much larger scale and more permanence. With this typology, there was a focus on production of water and food, where I explored various forms and configurations to see how I could be influenced by and optimize the design through solar gain. This video shows inside the desalination unit, which throughout the day creates a diffused light as well as providing fresh water source. The terraces act as a place to meet and interact and share ideas, creating sense of unity and interaction through the intersecting floor planes. Walking around the camps, I took a lot of inspiration from the initiatives that were already started by the community. I imagine these type of low-tech systems could be used, using recycled materials like the community desalination garden project that we did together. This video is on top of one of the roof terraces. It shows how the gardens can be used for conventional soil-based gardens, or under the shade maybe have some form of gravity-fed hydroponic systems. The third typology is living with desalination and water storage. I've taken inspiration from the water storage towers. The design also has a desalination roof, which is fed from the seawater storage in the middle, which throughout the day gets extremely hot and feeds into the roofing system. Now go into the water production, the solar desalination and community shade. During my time spent within the community, I noticed that all the meetings they were having were underneath some form of shade. What I wanted to try and achieve was actually not only a meeting space, but also a free access to a water source for the public or for the community. The way the system works is seawater is fed into a conductive metal coil, which is gravity fed, and by the time it reaches the bottom, evaporation will be captured and salt brine will be separated. This is another example of a public desalination unit. Here's an axonometric drawing which I wanted to show how the different buildings and services correlate with one another. Also the different circulation connections and how over time people create their own sort of a character and charm within these spaces. And here you can see the overlapping of where the different services are in resource production. The next is the aquaponics and hydroponics facility. This is a central facility as a large-scale resource production. During my time in Chile, I visited 3 different hydroponics facilities, which were extremely inspiring, considering when you have soil which is not fertile, you have alternative ways of creating your food source. I explored what ponics system I could use within my facility and the different fruits and vegetables that could be produced. Thinking about the hydroponics and aquaponics resource loop and how they intertwine with a wider community loop, which complements it. A breakdown from level to level, this is the aquaponics facility at ground level. This is a a glimpse inside the aquaponics facility. As you can see, there's a central corridor, which is the public passageway through the facility. The next level is the hydroponics. What I really wanted to achieve with this space is that knowledge could be shared, as well as opportunities for people to experiment with different ideas. And here you also have the distribution area. This was using the systems which they already have in place, where they have trucks which drop off food around the different areas of the informal settlements or community space. And lastly, this is the market and public space. This is where I wanted to create a city attraction to draw people from all over the city. I'm dedicating this part of the site to provide public programs which are really lacking in the area. I'm creating the first formal bridge crossing over the train tracks. This area also has a large green park which uses the recycled grey water from the housing. Just a breakdown of an exo of the marketplace. This video starting from the public park area, which leads into the marketplace. The market offers different types of stalls. So as you enter here, you'll see that some are more permanent than others. So more permanent stalls and more temporary, short-term. And then you enter into this community event space, which is open to the public. In summary, informality within cities needs to be urgently addressed for the creation of safe, sustainable, and prosperous communities. Governmental systems will inevitably face growing stresses and climate change, privatization, and resource scarcity. People may need to become autonomous when it comes to accessing essential resources. I really see this initial development as a discovery of resource autonomy and provoke thought of alternative ways of being. This is a way of expressing how people could utilize living with resources. The current social housing system is failing. It is rigid and copy and paste. The current system doesn't offer value further than accommodating people. This is not just seen in Chile, but in many other countries. We're facing a lot of big challenges in the future. And I think during this COVID time, when I was doing my thesis, it became more relevant to me, this proposal. And especially looking at South America at the moment and how it's been absolutely destroyed by this pandemic. And when you think about these communities which actually don't have access to basic resources of washing their hands on a daily basis, how are these spaces supposed to, or these people supposed to have proper hygiene and sanitation, as well as a lot of these people relying on a day-by-day paycheck. And if they can't go to work, then they can't feed their families. So for me, this proposal became something which I'd like to try and push further forward, because you need to have these spaces where people can have the power over their resource access, especially when you have governmental systems which are rejecting a lot of these people in societies. Thank you very much, guys.